Next on the agenda is a reading of the warning, and that's where I turn it over to Brian Savage, our town moderator.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Danny, and good evening, everyone. The town in Swanton and Town of Swanton School District, the annual meeting of Tuesday, March 1st, 2016. The legal voters of the Town of Swanton and Town of Swanton School District, who are legal voters in town meeting, are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Swanton Village Municipal Complex, First and Elm Street, Swanton, on Tuesday, March 1st, 2016 at 7 a.m. to vote the articles herein set forth. All articles are to be voted by Australian ballot system. The polls open at 7 a.m. and will close at 7 p.m. Article 1, to elect the legal voters of said town the following officers. Moderator for the town and town school district, one selectman for a 3-year term, one selectman for a 2-year term, one lister for a 3-year term, one lister for a 1-year term, one auditor for a 3-year term, one school director for a 3-year term, one school director for a 2-year term, one trustee of public money for a 3-year term, one trustee of public money for a 2-year unexpired term, one library trustee for a 5-year term, one library trustee for a 5-year term, one cemetery commissioner for a 5-year term, a town grand juror, town agent, and collector of delinquent taxes. Article 2, will the town appropriate $830,675.84 for the operation and maintenance of the town highway department? Article 3, will the town appropriate $151,578 for fire protection, $58,065 of which is for a fire truck replacement fund? Article 4, will the town appropriate $121,766.02 to provide police protection to the residents of the town of Swanton? Article 5, will the voters of the Swanton School District approve the school directors to expend $8,681,252, which is the amount the school directors have determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year? It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $13,140 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 2.73% higher than spending for the current year. Article 6, will the voters of the Swanton School District authorize the school directors to borrow money in anticipation of taxes? Article 7, will the town appropriate $453,346.88 for the town general expenses? Article 8, shall the town collect its real and personal property to defray the expenses of the town for the fiscal year commencing January 1, 2016 and annually thereafter by its actual receipt of payment? Postmarks will not be accepted at the town office by 5 p.m. on October the 15th, or if the 15th shall fall on a weekend or holiday, the following business day by 5 p.m. with 8% penalty and 1% interest per month or portion thereof due thereon for the first 3 months, and 1.5% per month or portion thereon thereafter to be charged for late payment of any installment. Article 9, will the town appropriate $234,000 to provide rescue services to the residents of the town of Swanton? Article 10, will the town appropriate $104,925 to the operating and maintenance budget of the Recreation Department? Article 11, will the town appropriate $134,869.58 towards the operating and maintenance budget of the Swanton Public Library? And Article 12, will the town appropriate $1,000 to support the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity to support the food shelf, Northwest Family Foods? The legal voters of the town of Swanton are further notified that an informational meeting will be held at the Swanton Village Municipal Complex on Monday, February 22nd, 2016 at 7 p.m. for the purpose of explaining all budget items to the voters. Dated to Swanton, Vermont, this 19th day of January 2016. Signed Daniel Bilodeau, Chair, Joel A. Clark, Vice Chair, L. John Lavoie, William Thompson Jr., James Gilmet, Selectman, Jay Cummings, Chair, Tobias McGuire, Vice Chair, Mary Wood, Patty Jo Walker, and John Creelman, School Directors. Dated and filed on the 19th day of January 2016. Attest Kathy L. Fournier, Town Clerk. Now, on the agenda will be the Swanton School District fiscal year 2016-17 budget presentation. And with us this evening, there's 3 members of the school board. We got Jay Cummings, Patty Jo Walker, and Mary Wood. Also, our superintendent, Mr. Whitney Goodrich, is in the audience. So I'll turn it over to members of the board.
Oh, thank you, Brian, and good evening, everybody. As Brian mentioned, I'm Jay Cummings, the current chair of the Swanton School, and I want to thank you all for coming. Before we present the budget, I've got a couple of comments that I would like to mention. Talking about our board, I believe that we've got a very good board with some broad interest and experiences. We've got a government worker, a retired teacher, a small business owner, and myself as a banker, so I think we represent a good corner, all the corners of the community that we can. I'm pretty proud of the work that we've done as a board, and we're extremely mindful of everyone that everything we do affects, the students and the staff. I'd also like to, and I'm going to get in trouble for this after, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to thank the business managers, Laura and McAllister and Becky Hart. It's an extremely complicated job. They're in charge of $35 million out of the SU. The state is always very difficult to work with as things are changing at the last minute. So it's very difficult for those two to do their job to get us the information we want when the state hasn't decided which way they're going to go. So it's an impossible task. I don't know how they do it. They deserve a lot of credit, and we would definitely be lost without them. There's probably a few more people that we can thank, but tonight's just about the budget, so I'm going to try to be mindful of that. Any complaints on budget cuts and that type of thing should be directed to the board. The administration gives us guidance and information on that, but at the end of the day, the buck stops here, so we're responsible for that. I'm going to do my best to stay on the topic of budget tonight. Even people do that because I can read and watch at the same time. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. So starting off with the school that we won an award, a gold medal for the Healthier Schools Challenge, and that was based upon improving the food and offerings, nutritional health food choices, physically active, and some wellness programs and policies impacted there. So our goal on the budget tonight, administration has worked diligently to present a budget that meets the needs of the Swanton students at a reasonable cost to the taxpayers. And I believe Dina on this next slide is the expert. She'd like to mention a few words on that. Dina?
This slide is just showing some of the things that's currently happening in our school and really where we're focused on our school priorities. That center circle, MTSS, stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. We know that we have students at varying levels who need supports both academically and behaviorally. The things on the outside are all of the things that we are doing as a staff to develop our teachers and so that they are stronger in these areas to support our kids. We are currently working through professional learning communities. That means that one teacher is not working by his or herself, but we're working as grade level teams, so we have that support. We are working with Dr. Anthony Mohammed, an internationally well-known expert in school culture. That is something that's coming to us through the supervisory union, so all of the elementary schools and our high school is taking part in that. We're constantly looking at the behavior and the social and emotional needs of our students. Also trying to create a master schedule that gives us the most opportunities for kids learning. And we're also working at the SU level around an instructional framework that looks at academic instruction as well as behavioral. So a lot of those things that are happening, it's not just Swanton's work alone, but it's really driven by the direction of our supervisory union.
Thank you, Dina. Moving on to our next slide, the 21st century teaching and learning. A lot of that revolves around professional development for our staff. There's a lot of social and emotional skill training there, which is becoming a bigger part of their daily jobs. Our IT department applying more resources there as we feel that's quite valuable. And a few years ago, we launched an initiative to fund the one-to-one computer initiative, and that for grades 4, 5, and 6. And those are things like iPads and Chromebooks, so when the teachers are giving their lessons, each student there has one instead of having to wait their turn. It's obviously quite important to make sure the kids are prepared with the electronics there. Early childhood program, there's been some changes there, so we're going to be discontinuing the Head Start classroom and replacing that with 2 sections of early ed. There was a state law in there that increased the spending to $53,094, and then the 30 hours a week for that grant there. There's been some changes in the centralization of the special ed budget. A lot of those things have been moved over to the SU. I think what's just important to mention here, hasn't increased the cost of that, it's just where it's being addressed, and then it gets billed back to the school at the same basic dollar amount. I think we can go on to the budget assessment, which is a little bit more in depth of what I mentioned. Yeah, all of that stuff ends up going to the SU and then applied through the formulas and billed back through each individual school. So at the SU, there's a lot more regulations and administrative responsibilities than we've ever had. And this slide also talks about the SU with the assessments back. I guess I got a little bit ahead of myself there, but you get the general point. Special ed has been moved over to the supervisory union, and that all of that expense is monitored there. And I think the busing is now over there too, the transportation. So now we get into some of the meat of the potato here. Declining student population. You probably have heard student enrollment has decreased about 20% over the last decade, and although Swanton has declined about 14% in the last 5 years alone. So during the budget development, we're mindful of all of those things, and we try to keep a close eye on the ratios of student to staff, and doing some right sizing with the school. And that'll come up a little bit later in another slide. This next one shows the enrollment trends, and you can see how the SU on the top line, how that's been supervisory union wide, that's been dropping, and then the red line below that is just specific for our school. I think when I started on the board, we were around 560 students, and we're down now to about 490. We've made some changes in staff there. Again, we'll bring that up a little bit later. But it's hard to nail down a moving target like that. I think now most of our classrooms, Dina, we're in the upper 60s of population per grade, with the exception of, is it K or first grade? Kindergarten is well over 80, so it's not an easy thing to predict all the time, and we do the best we can to meet all the needs, to match those changes to it. So next slide is the current staff that we have is 121.26, and it's broken down by the 63.6 professional staff, 12.8 of the support staff, and then 44.86 of the educational support, the paraprofessionals and behavior and those types of things. I guess we don't need to really get into the fractions of people. Sometimes we can get people to work on a 0.5 or a 0.75 or anything in between there that works for our needs and theirs. Contract negotiations. We just signed the current master agreement is good with the staff until 2017. I think both of those, we purposely negotiated shorter terms. We could have gone in and made it easier for ourselves and negotiated longer term contracts with them. But with so many things changing at the state level, especially the cost of healthcare, we took it upon ourselves to negotiate shorter contracts because nobody knew what was going to happen, and we didn't want to be in a position later on that we regretted. So it was a lot more work for the board to do those things, but we just thought it was the prudent thing to do with how everything was changing. Yeah, I guess we can skip to the next one, staff benefits. As I mentioned a little bit here about the health care, as an SU, we negotiate a group contract through VSBIT. This year we're looking at, or the 2017 fiscal year, we're looking at a 7.9% increase in health care, but a 5.6% decrease in the dental. Next slide is our budget priorities. We talked a little bit about the right size and balancing to take into account the population of our staff and student ratios. Again, mentioning here about the social and emotional needs of the students and maintaining that one-to-one computer initiative, which was pretty important to us. Maintenance on the physical plant, we've taken a good hold of that the last few years and got a few things that were deferred that needed addressment. So I think we've got a good handle on that asset right now and some good preventative maintenance, so we're not going to be given any surprises coming up in the future. Next slide is budget adjustment. So we're in the year 2 of an early buyout with a few staff members from last year. Going forward, we're going to be reducing 2 interventionists and transitioning those folks into classroom teachers. And then there was a few other line items that needed to get addressed to accommodate the activities there. Capital reserve projects, going back a little bit in history. In 2014, we did a central school parking lot upgrade. Then after that, we went over to the Babcock building that was in need of the HVAC. So we did a phase 1 project there, and the following year we finished out the phase 2 of that project. Also, this past year on the capital reserve, we did a security camera upgrade. There were some safety and liability issues that we wanted to get ahead of there and not be behind that. And that's just been installed and completed. Earlier this year, we did some asbestos abatement in the Babcock building, and if passed on the budget this year, we plan to do a phase 2 of that later on. So the language changed in Montpelier at the time that this PowerPoint was put together, and the language going out to the voters had to change. So that's why you see it worded here that we didn't put the capital reserve as a separate article. It actually is put in the entire budget. Doesn't change anything, it's just worded differently, and that's the only reason I mentioned that. Then we found out just recently that Montpelier said it's okay, you can go back to the old way. So we did a bunch of changes that we didn't really need to do, but either way, it's fine. It's the same amount of money. So the budget we're looking for that we're proposing here tonight is $8,681,252. Comparing us with other schools, we're the 87th least expensive out of 103 Vermont district schools that operate belonging to a union or a joint high school. So I see that as a pretty decent value and pretty responsible spending. Excuse me. So what you're going to be voting on, the question will be, will the voters approve an $8,681,252 amount necessary for the next school year? The equalized pupil spending on that is going to be $13,140, which is 2.73% higher than last year. A little bit of history here on fiscal year 15, 16, 17. From 16 to 17, it's a modest increase of $131,453. And it also should be noted in there that 16 was actually a reduction of just over 104,000, where we made some right sizing of staff there. So we were quite aggressive last year with some cuts, and just you can't continue that all the time. Again, on the next slide, when you look at the school district data, comparing our equalized student spending per pupil at the $12,790 mark, way over on the right, and compared to some other towns. Derby's a little bit lower than us, and Middlebury and Norwich are substantially higher. So again, I think that's a pretty good comparison of us doing a pretty good job and offering a good value to student and taxpayer. The homestead tax rate variables. It is controlled by the taxpayers, but it's not as simple as it was many years ago with Act 68, and everything gets stirred up in the giant pool and then redistributed. Pretty complicated. I probably don't know the half of it, and that's why we rely so much on our business managers to keep us informed of that ever-changing model and complexity there. Controlled by the legislators, the equalized pupil, which is a 2-year weighted average of the students, and currently our number is 525.73. The yield amount here, and these numbers will come up a little bit later in a formula that's on the slide, set by the legislator of $9,870, and then the base tax rate will assume $1 for the time being. Next slide is the homestead tax rate variables. The local, state, and federal revenues that vary here, and then the common level of appraisal set by the state, which currently is 108.69. You'll see that number pop up again, along with this other number of the ratio of elementary to secondary students. And we currently have 49.93% in the elementary. Next slide tries to put together how that formula works. And the per pupil spending is $13,140 divided by that property yield that we mentioned, the 98.70, which gives us equals the district tax rate of $1.33. Then it gets multiplied by that percentage of elementary school at the 49.93, giving you the equalized tax rate of 0.6647. And then divided by the CLA of 108.69, which we showed you earlier, gives you the projected homestead tax rate of 0.612. Somewhere paint's drying and nobody's watching that either, so this is exciting stuff for us. Next slide shows on how the Swanton school budget has a little impact, very little impact on the business and non-homestead tax rate, and it's estimated that that tax rate is going to be 0.707. So the homestead tax rate after the CLA adjustment for the 2015-2016 school year was 0.6102, and we're now projecting a 0.6116, which is only 0.0014 higher than last year. So it's a pretty modest increase, and I think we've done the best we could to present a responsible budget here. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. Good education at a reasonable cost to the taxpayers. If you have a lot more questions, we can try to answer those, or you can contact Whitten Goodrich directly. This PowerPoint's going to be put up on the Swanton Elementary webpage later on, probably by tomorrow, hopefully. And then the next slide shows, which is also on the website, if you need to contact any one of the school directors, our home phone numbers and our school board emails. So hopefully that wasn't too number crunchy for you, but that's the best we can do with what we have in front of us.
Okay, so any questions for Jay or any of his people on his board? Just to let everybody know too, this is live tonight. People are watching this at home, and folks can call in and ask questions to anybody on the boards. Harold?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. First of all, I want to thank you all for producing that and everything. But one question I have for you is, how many staff, or did you release any staff this year to come in?
For next year or for this current year?
Before you put this budget together. Before you put this budget together this year, had you already reduced?
Yeah, last year we had reduced staff in the neighborhood of 6 or 8. There were 3 on an early buyout. There was some attrition that wasn't replaced. So people weren't.
And there's been a number of paraprofessionals that were not replaced as well.
You did replace them. So you did or you didn't?
No, we did not.
Okay, so how much would you project you saved? Roughly, not exactly, but roughly.
I don't know if we'll be, I don't know if we could answer that right here, right now, as far as the dollar amount for payroll, but I know from the budget the year before, we dropped 100 and, was it 30 in here that we mentioned? From fiscal year 14 to 15.
So basically what I'm getting at is you reduce staff by 100,000.
Yep.
So that is eliminated from what you needed for this year. So in my opinion, like I said, I've never had to put a budget together like this, so I went way off and got here. So wouldn't that be your budget to be up to 462,000 because you saved 100,000?
Say that last part again?
Because you saved 100,000 on expenses for the teachers.
Yep.
Because you're not spending that. Now.
Yep.
You increased your budget by 362. Wouldn't that theoretically be 462?
Where's the
Even though you
362?
didn't raise the money. You saved 100,000 that you didn't spend. If
Yep.
you increased the budget this year by 362, so theoretically,
Where's the
you actually
362?
saved,
I don't remember.
you increased that budget 462,000.
362 was what the budget is increased this year, which is a little over 4%.
You know, just theoretically, that I'm just trying to
If-
picture in my mind how.
Yeah, if we did not let those people go, yeah, we would be 100 grand more.
So
Not let go, but if we had replaced.
when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at your budget went up 462,000 because you saved money on the teachers. That's, I still think you did a good job. Don't get me wrong. The other thing is used to, about 3 or 4 years ago, put into this report, how many kids was in each class, and you eliminated that. Is there a reason why you eliminated that?
If we did, it was unintentional or thought it was unimportant. That information's widely available in many places.
I just think it would be
Yeah.
helpful if it was there, so we
Yeah.
can know as taxpayers how many kids are in each class.
In each, yeah, and I kind of alluded to that with, when I mentioned trying to predict the future populations. Most classes that we have are in the upper 60s, with the exception of the kindergarten, which was in the mid-80s, right? Which was we didn't anticipate that big of a jump. So if that helps you, mid-60s,
Well, it used to be.
yeah.
And I'm used to seeing it.
Yep.
I look this thing, one thing to the other. and I'm
Yep.
like, where is that? And it's not there.
Yep.
My final question, I'm not trying to.
And we can email it to you, that's fine, we
No,
don't.
that's fine. I'm not trying to pick your budget apart, but
Nope.
I have a question here. You're asking for $8,681,250. That includes the supervisory union?
Yes,
Okay.
is the short answer.
My question for that is, okay, I look on the next page, which is, this is from 1979, I look on 80. You got money coming in, $1,773,044. So you're telling me on the bottom line, education spending from K through 6 is $6,908,208. Why aren't we asking for just that amount of money? If we got $1,700,000 coming in. There's got to be a reason that I just curious.
Must be he's
What page you on,
talking about
Harold?
this.
Revenue. The number that you're asking for, and number 80 is for the revenues that they got money coming in.
The way the language is required by the state right now is you have to pass the budget amount, even though your tax rate is calculated on the net.
Okay, so when that 1.7 million, 1 and 3/4 million come in, where does that money go?
To offset your tax rate calculation. It's already being used to calculate your net ed spending, which is what your tax rate is calculated on when the state decides what needs to be raised in taxes statewide. They're using that number after anticipated revenue.
Okay, so we're not paying taxes on anything.
No.
That should actually be highlighted somewhere because I'm paying on 8.6 million. And we really need only 6.1. And the taxpayer does not know that unless it's explained to them somewhere.
I think that the new language that's being required for the article, where that slide is, it does start to allude to that, to educate taxpayers a little bit more, because it's looking at your spending for equalized people, which is calculated on your net ed spending rather than a flat budget amount. So it's stepping in that direction.
And I understand what you're saying, you being the business manager, understand that, but the common taxpayer does not understand that.
And under the Article 5, it really doesn't explain that.
Sorry.
Under Article 5, which is the vote for your budget,
Right,
it really does not explain that.
that you're not paying on.
Right. I think what Harold's alluding to is if you were to get the education or the information out there to the taxpayers or to the voters, you're you probably wouldn't have as much of a problem passing your budgets, because really raised by taxes isn't really going to be the $8,681,252. It's going to be the less of the amount once the state kicks in their money. So therefore, the tax rates are going to be less, and the formulas would probably be less.
Right. And thank you, Dan, because in your town budget, that's what you're saying.
Right,
This is what it's costing me to raise.
We say what we have to raise by taxes.
This is what we're gonna raise for taxes.
Exactly.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Sure.
I think Article 5, what we're doing is approving your total expenditure, but the tax rate is set anticipating that other money coming in, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's where we're voting approval to spend $8.681 million for this budget, but the tax rate is set with that offset of what you're expecting coming in, the 1.6 or whatever that number was on page 80.
But the new language.
So I see where there is some of the confusion there.
But the new language that's been added that talks about your 13,140 per equalized
Right.
pupil is based on your net ed spending amount after revenues. And the 2.73% increase is the increase on the ed spending per equalized pupil. We also tried to add some slides to the presentation that talk a lot more about ed spending, just trying to get that language to taxpayers to start thinking about spending for equalized people and ed spending. So I think we're moving in that direction because we feel the same way as you, that we really need to start educating the taxpayers as to the language and calculation itself. So I
And I understand that because, you know, a lot of people, including myself, I didn't understand that. Okay, I'm looking at 8.6, and I'm looking at 6.9.
Here's the other, we'll just stand up so I can have my back to people. Here's the other issue that's really changing the dynamic of budgeting, is we could have the same budget this year and next year, the tax rate is skyrocketing because it's driven by the revenue of each one of the students. And so having a decline in enrollment, that's going to cause the tax rate to go up substantially. And that's why schools are shifting to education spending per equalized pupil, so that you can see if our student numbers go down, that's the real driver. There's some other variables in there that affect it as well. There's about 7 things that affect our tax rate. So it's slowly transitioning from, it's not just the budget, it's that ed spending per equalized pupil.
And the other thing that is probably confusing to a lot of people is the media and the messenger put in there, when I added the numbers up in the messenger, that your budget is down $305,000 because $188,000 went away for special ed. But they never said that special ed actually just went to another place. So it looks like your budget is down $305,000 in money that you saved, but it was just put to another place,
Yeah.
which the media should have said, this money just got shifted from one pot to another because you're still paying the $305,000.
Yep. I didn't see that article, but yes.
It was $400.
Not to go too deep into it and turn everything into a debate, is in the beginning of your pitch, where you mentioned a few things that got moved to the supervisory union. So when people hear that, they think, cool, it's, you know, the school budget's going to be less because we're moving here, but they don't understand that it's all part of the pie.
Assess that.
Right.
Right.
Like, yeah, I think you mentioned transportation.
Built back.
Yeah. So Harold, just so I understand, I think what you're saying is you want to know how much the state's giving us and how much the community's paying
I
for.
would like, you know, and this is just a suggestion, that you maybe follow a little bit like the select board does. Okay, you need 8.6 million to run your school. But we're projecting that it's only going to cost you 6.9 because we have anticipated revenues that may come in.
From the state.
Yes.
So cost you meaning
Yes,
you.
which you're gonna, as you know, Dan had said, you probably, you know, I'm not gonna say you're having trouble getting your budget through, but it would really help to get your budget.
Yeah, okay.
It's just a thought.
Yep, yep. No, that's good information.
Greg brings a good point. Article 5, we don't have any flexibility on how we can't change that. That is a fixed statement that is directed by legislature that we have to put in our warning. So there's not any ability there to make that change. We certainly hear what you're saying about being communicating that better in other places, including on the PowerPoint slide. So we hear you, and we'll get that done for next year.
Okay, thank you.
It's really difficult for the school board to come up with these figures when they're constantly changing things in Montpelier, because as we were doing this, we were in constant communication in regards to what we needed to do, how we needed to word things, what things needed to go in what section or in another section. So maybe in the future, what we want to look at too is what some other districts are doing and do their school vote after all of these things are taken care of, so we have a legitimate number and know where we're going in regards to our budget. So just put that on the table for the future. 'Cause it does pose a big problem for the school board.
Anything else? Rainey?
How does the Swanton School fare versus other K through sixes? You know, with the, how many teachers per child? How many pairs per child? How does it fare? In other schools, whether it's Fairfield or St. Albans or Sheldon, do we get a higher rate of teachers in pairs versus children, or is it the same, or what kind of number are we looking
There's a
at?
page in the report that the state puts out, and I thought I had it marked here. The state identifies some key schools that are similar to Swanton.
The state did not get us that report in time to go to principal
Oh, that's
here,
why it's in
so
those.
I was going to be handing that out, or have a file at the, came up 4 days after we had to go to principal.
So what they did is they compared us to Derby. They're all pre-K through 6 schools with the exception of Bennington. And, is this the one? Oh, yes, here it is. It's Essex, Mallett's Bay, Union Elementary. So we're talking a similar grade configuration, similar numbers. And our student-teacher ratio is 10.5 to 1. We are the lowest of any of those schools. The highest is 17. Actually, we want a higher number there, I'm sorry. Mallett's Bay has 17 to 1. The average is 13.74, so we're under that. And last year, we made some adjustments to that right sizing. We're continuing to do that, and that's one of the reasons that we transitioned 2 interventionists into 2 classrooms this year. You can't do it all at once. And what's happened is, as Jay said earlier, we've lost 14% of our students over the last 5 years. Every year, you can't just lop off 1 or 2 teachers because you have students in pre-K through 6 that there's 1 or 2 less each year. And what we're doing is we're looking at adjusting those numbers. And we use 3 metrics. We use student-staff ratios, we use student-teacher ratios, and we do class size ratios. When I say student-teacher ratios, you're lumping in librarians, nurses, any of your professional people into that ratio. So when you walk into a classroom in Swanton, you might see 18 or 20 students. In fact, kindergarten this year is 21 students per teacher, and that's a lot, especially with really young children. So that's one of the reasons that we transitioned interventionists, so that next year we can lower those numbers a bit and have a reasonable opportunity for all children to learn. As far as student administrator ratio, the average is 302 students per administrator. We're 277. There are schools that are higher. The lowest, Rutland Intermediate, is 195. And the teacher administrative ratio, the average is 22, and we're 27. The highest is Essex at 34. Actually 38 at the Union Elementary, which is in Montpelier. So we're kind of in the middle in regard to that. That's a fair question, and that's something that we continue to look at. We not only look at student-teacher ratios, we also look at learning needs. And so you balance that with the staffing that we have in our schools.
Anything else for the school board?
One quick.
Okay, Eric.
This was probably the hard. The equal arts student, you said it was 525 point blah blah for 2 years. Now, is that from last year and this year, or this year and what's projected next year to get 525? Because you said 490 right now. Now, to get 525, either one year we had 560 kids, or we're projecting we're going to have 560 kids, if that's how they come up with the formula.
Yeah. Well, the formula is not just on the physical bodies in the school. There are other attributes about each child that make that number change. In fact, Wynn and Laura know more of the details of that.
That's 2 years. It's last year and this year. And the equalization factor, an elementary student is counted as 0.87 unless they are students from families of poverty, and then you put a 25% boost on that. And if they don't speak English as their primary language, you put another 20% boost on that. So you could have an elementary student that's 115 or more counted, and that's just a revenue stream. So the state pays you on what it will require to educate that student. So that's why you get percentages of students, and that's why generally it's a fair amount more than the actual number of schools. 490 bodies, 525 equalization factor.
Okay, thank you. I wouldn't know unless.
No. Oh, you could teach an entire class and take a weekend to get half of this understood, and it's pretty complicated.
You guys do a very good job. Thank you.
Well, it goes back to these guys, so.
Anything from the board? Brian? Anybody?
Just to add one thing, in addition to Dina, who's the principal, there's Justina Jeanette, who's our new assistant principal, and we're happy to have her with us. And she's also a Swanton resident, so she wears multiple hats.
Thank you.
In that you're chairing, so I guess I could say, it was mentioned about, in Montpelier, we've informally talked about encouraging school districts to have their annual meetings not on town meeting day. It may be helpful in the future, whether that will ever materialize. Since your fiscal year starts July 1, and then by the time we have the ed bill, because it changes every year and it's a moving target. But it would be certainly by April that's decided upon and usually signed into law. It was a real mess this year because of the changes to Act 46 from last year that we had a history-making session at 12:01 a.m. On a Saturday morning. And it didn't affect Swanton because I see you had already warned and signed the warning on January 19th. So it's a never-ending saga. The school funding mechanism, Act 60, Act 68, in mine and many other people's opinions, is broken beyond repair. And so we'll wait to see what happens. There's a new administration coming in next year, one way or the other. Something will have to be looked at and changing and getting something a bit better that makes more sense.
So Brian, is your suggestion to delay our meeting on this and delay the voting on the budget of this to a later time?
I would probably say that should be considered.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, all right.
I believe
It would be better to be
There's 20 school
more
districts.
exact.
I think they said 20 school districts would have their annual meeting in May. So
Really?
they already know, the legislature has
Much
done
more
its
is
work.
decided by then, yeah,
Right.
we're trying to anticipate.
So just a thought,
Interesting.
think that.
I know you would like that, wouldn't you?
It's just a matter of getting people out to vote.
Right. That's right.
Okay. Anything else for the school board? I know in the past, sometimes you folks leave when we're all done with you guys. I would ask you to stay because there's something kind of nice that's going to happen tonight within our community, and I think you should, I would like you to stay to experience it. Okay?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thank you.
So with that being said, we'll go into our town informational meeting. What's that? So I'm going to mimic Jay, and I'm not going to read word for word, but we did do a lot. We had a lot of highlights in 2015. The Vermont Council on Rural Development met. Folks, Joel's a big part of it. Adam's a big part of it. There's a lot of people probably in this room that's a big part of it, and it's continuing. We don't want to lose our momentum. We had a dinner scheduled last week. It was put off for reasons, and that's going to come back around. So that's an ongoing thing. Memorial United Methodist Church, parking lots. This is kind of like part of the enhancement thing where the town and the village are working together. Adam had a big part in that, David did. So we merged the parking lots between the town and the village. We're maintaining them, taking care of them. It gives more downtown parking for folks in the community. 2015, we purchased a new truck for the town. It was purchased within our means of our, what is it, 37.5 that we budget every year. That's in our town highway budget. So it didn't cost any more for the taxpayers to purchase this truck. It now puts our fleet, and I'll talk a little bit about, well, actually this particular truck, we traded 2 trucks for it, and it was Clark's, correct, Harold, that we did the business with. They took our 97 International and our 2002 International as trade. Those 2 trucks were nickel and diming us. It was a win-win situation. They actually let us keep 1 truck and use it like it's our own, even though it belonged to them, until we got our new truck in. We purchased a new dump body for our 2005 Mack. The Mack is a very strong truck. You know, motor, transmission, rear end. The box was in pretty rough shape. Harold and his crew and the board came up with that. Instead of spending another $200,000 on a tandem truck, it'd be good to spend $30,000 on a box and get another 10 years out of the truck. The way our fleet right now for the town is, it doesn't look like we're going to have to purchase another truck for probably 10 years. Which is good news. So in the meantime, we're building that $37,500 a year for 10 years. So again, when it comes time for a new truck, it shouldn't be a big hit to the taxpayers, in my opinion. Robin Hood Drive, the west end, we started the work. Bushy Street completion, we are completely resurfaced from Grand Avenue all the way to was it Leduc at the end? And we redid the sidewalks from Grand Avenue to Robin Hood, which is, for the school, is huge. I mean, there was a lot of kids walking in the streets, and now they're staying on the sidewalk. I live on that street, so I live further down where the sidewalks didn't get repaired. But so that was done. 2015, we paved our Fit and Healthy path. And this is kind of what we wanted to share with you folks here tonight is at our last select board meeting, we actually dedicated that path to somebody that had his heart and soul into it, is Dick Thompson sitting in the audience. I'd ask folks to give him a hand. Everybody knows Dick Thompson. He worked for us for 16 years as our town administrator. He decided to retire a couple years back. Greatly missed. But some of this board, John Lavoie, myself, were involved with this, and Harold was involved with it. A lot of employees, a lot of folks around town were involved with it, and we have a real nice rec path today that you know, it's used by non-motorized vehicles. It's handicap accessible. If we could just keep the vandalism down, it would be great. And there is some stuff going on with that right now, so slow down, David. Okay, bud? So with that, later on tonight, we have to make this legal document. We're going to sign a resolution naming that path after Richard Dick Thompson, Fit and Healthy Recreation Path. And it'll be framed, he'll get a certificate, and it'll be in the history of Swanton. So, thanks, Dick. All right, David. So in 2015, we lost one of our employees that worked for Harold. Morris Mojetti worked for us for 14 years. He decided to move on to the Fairfield Highway Department as a foreman. And, you know, he had to do the right thing for him and his family. I talked to him just a couple days ago. Joel talked to him. And he's doing great. We appreciate what he did for us for 14 years, and he will be missed. So if you see him out and about, shake his hand, please. 2015 accomplishments, we tried to level fund wherever we could, and we did. We paid down a new highway garage that you folks gave us a couple years back. You gave us $40,000 a year through a grant for over 20 years. We sold our Robin Hood property that Dave Fosgate was leasing from us, and we applied that $150,000 to that garage. And then we also, so we applied that $150,000 that we got from Robin Hood, from Dave Fosgate, to help pay down our garage, so it should be paid off before the 20 years is up. And it actually is saving us money, because now we're paying $40,000 a year, Kathy, and we're actually paying off, what, $57,000 a year, I believe? Yeah. That's the payment we're making? Okay. We sold Part D, which is on the east side of 89, to Energy Tech, North Country Incorporated. They gave us $175,000 for that, which goes into our Economic Development Fund. We sponsored and participated in events for the Swanton Enhancement Project. We already talked about that. We'll probably talk more about it. And we were awarded some grants for the town and village municipal plan that's still being worked on today. I think we got a meeting the end of this month, or is it next month? This month, the 29th, to touch up on some of that stuff. Highway Department, they paved Bushy Road, 1.8 miles, Donaldson Road, a little over half a mile, Bushy Street to Leduc, 0.2 miles, Kellogg Road, 0.2, Robin Hood Drive, 0.3. They did some ditching on Vashon and Comstock that actually cost about $23,000, but because of grants that Harold and David work on, it only costs, we got $18,000, so $5,000 out of the budget for that project. New culverts were installed on 6 different roads: Shoalin, Monument, Church, French Hill, Middle, Campbell Bay Road. Ditching was done on Monument Road, Church, Middle, Kellogg, Campbell's Bay, and that's an every year thing where ditching is done. We try to work with our farmers to do the right thing. I think we got a good bunch of guys that do a good job out there for our roads. We hired Cross Consulting to finish the work on Robin Hood. We're actually working on how we're going to connect Robin Hood to Route 78 or Grand Avenue down by the Border Patrol, and that's kind of what this is talking about. But he's also working on the stretch from Bushy Street to Grand Avenue, doing the engineering part of it with all the surveying and permitting and all that stuff that we need to do. Before I keep going, but that project, we signed a contract with the state, how many years ago, John? 3-4 years ago, Harold, anyway.
At least 5.
But it has to be completed or we'll be in breach of contract in August of 2017.
Yep.
Okay, so that is moving along. We applied for grants to repave the pond road. We're doing that this year. Have you already applied for those, David?
No, we're in the process.
Okay, so we're doing that. If that happens, then 2017 we'll have money to do the pond road. We continue to permit, I just said that about Robin Hood Drive. Peter Cross is working on that with Joel. We're looking at paving our industrial park down off from 78. Some areas in West Swanton. We've got to get to work. We were supposed to do this last year to construct a lean-to. We have a lot of nice equipment that's paid for by the taxpayers. We have excavators and bucket loaders and backhoes, and we need to get it. We keep them under cover now, but it makes it very tight in that new garage. And with a lean-to, kind of like what the village did over here, it'll help protect and maintain our equipment that you guys pay for, that we all pay for. We did run into a cement wall, if you want to say, that it's going to probably be done in 2 phases. The shed, we got some issues. It was designed for a 12-foot wall, and the people built a 16-foot wall, and that's why we got Peter Cross kind of working with us too, to take care of that. But I don't know if we'll complete it this year. It's going to be done in 2 phases. Let's see. We're working with the village on a sidewalk project that's running from our rec path by the depot to Lake Street. to Lake Street, and then from Dunkin' Donuts to Missisquoi High School, which is a huge safety issue for kids and folks that walk those areas. We did get a grant for the feasibility, was it? Is Reggie here? Reggie? It was the feasibility study. We did get that grant, and that's being looked at right now. And we continue to apply for grants to do things that we just talked about, ditching, building roads, building sidewalks. Joel's played a big part of that. David has, and Reggie has, and Harold. So it's a team effort between the town and the village. So now we'll talk about budgets. You guys want this back? No?
I don't want to have all the fun tonight.
So 2016 budget requests, the summary is if all voted articles are approved, the general will be $1,126,822.59. Said I wasn't going to read it all, but I'm going to read this stuff because I feel it's very important. The highway budget is $1,306,076.40. The town resident budget would be a total of $2,432,889.99. Village budget be $1,227,298. School budget we already talked about, and MVU budget's $15,477,560. The general budget, if all articles are approved, $1,126,822.59. And this is what Harold was alluding to and what we were talking about. To be raised by taxes would be $453,346.88. So the projected 2016 tax rate would be 0.1425. Last year's was 0.1162. So it's an increase of 0.0262. And this is based, I believe, on a $200,000 house.
So that's coming.
Okay, yeah. So that's actually on $100. The highway budget, if all articles are approved, I already said those numbers. To be raised by taxes would be $830,675.84, and the rate would be 0.2365. Last year's was 0.2314, so it's an increase of 0.0051 on $100. So the town residential actual for 15 and 16, I don't have to go through all the numbers, but the 16 town general tax would be 0.1425. The highway would be 0.2365. I already said these. Education tax, 1.2480 compared to last year's of 1.2467, which is not a huge increase. Total town tax rate last year was 1.5944. This year it's going to be 1.6270. And then for the village, their projected for 2016 is 0.1425 for the general. For the village, tax rate 0.7737, education tax 1.2480, which is the same as ours. And the village tax rate total would be 2.1642. Okay. So projected non-residents, people that own more than one house on the house they don't live in, the general would be 0.1425. The highway would be 0.2365. Education is 1.4160. The total would be 1.795. And then for the village, it's 0.1425 for the general. The other rate is 0.7737. Education's the same as ours, and their total would be 2.3322 on non-residential properties. So projected 2016 residential properties, property taxes on a $200,000 house in 2015 was $3188.80. 2016 would be $3254, an increase of $65.20. And for the village, last year was $4,207.40 on a $200,000 house. 2016 would be $4,328.40 for an increase of $121. And this is if all articles are passed. Non-resident for the town, Last year is $34.93. This year is $35.90, an increase of $97. For the village, last year was $45.11. This year is $46.64.40, and an increase of $152.80. So now we're going to get to the candidates, and there's a few here, I think. Auditors, 3 years. John Hubbard, I don't think is John here? No. Jim Pratt's in Florida, lister for 3 years. Need a lister for 1 year. Nobody signed a petition, so we're looking for write-ins. Collector of delinquent taxes, 1 year. Betty. Betty's here. Betty Cheney. Anything you want to say, Betty? Trustee of public money, 3 years. Brian Savage. Anything you want to say, Brian?
No, but thank you for your support. We don't have anything to do because the town has no money kicking around that the trustees would have to take care of.
He's not lying. Trustees of public money, 2 years. Again, it's a write-in. Nobody filled out a petition. Candidates for school director, 2 years. John Creelman. Is he here? No. School director, 3 years. Toby's not here. Library trustee, 5 years. Is Rebecca Rupp here? She's been on for a year or two now, and she's doing a great job. Another library trustee, Paul Foyce. Foyce. French. Cemetery commissioner, 5 years, Don Bell. Selectman, 2 years, Jeff Rowley. I think I saw him. You want to say anything, Jeffrey? Nothing?
That's a first.
What was that? Nothing. I heard you, I just wanted you to repeat it. Selectman, 3 years, Joel Clark. Anything, brother?
Thanks for the support the last 4 years, and look forward to your support this year and another 3 years.
Town agent, Gerald Barney. Gerald's not here. Grand juror, town grand juror, 1 year, Gerald Barney. Moderator, 1 year, town school district, Brian Savage.
That's nothing to say.
Okay, we have a website. I think everybody knows about it, as well as the village has a nice website. Anything else up there? I want to thank everybody for coming out. So to go, any questions on the budget? None? Because Kathy's got answers to them all.
Come on, Harold, we want some questions on this one, too.
I don't have a question, but I have a compliment. Are you accepting compliments?
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking Bushy Pond out of circulation, especially in the rain when buses are going back and forth and kids are on the sidewalk. I appreciate not getting sprayed. And I appreciate you interested in the intersection of Bushy and Robin Hood. When that becomes a thoroughfare, I think we're putting in a blinking stoplight. Is that true?
Right now, it's a four-way stop. It's already been added to our ordinance, and it's enforceable by law now. Even though it's a three-way, the fourth isn't completed yet. It won't be until next year. But we decided to go with a four-way so that we don't have to revisit the ordinance when it's time. And
we've also talked, when about the board is, when that does get all set up, to try to come up to make it so we either have speed bumps or something to slow people down, to make them know that that crossing is close in hand, just so we don't have any issues down through there. So we still have a little bit of work to talk about how we're going to do that, but that is our fourth.
I don't think we've actually mentioned red light stoplights.
Right.
We have talked about, like John said, speed bumps, and we're not sure if the highway crews actually like those or not with plowing, unless they're removable.
We'll make them small, Harold.
But safety is our number one concern, and I think what we've done so far with the three-way has helped a lot. And it's not just people driving cars, it's school buses as well. You know.
It took us a couple of days to have it ingrained that the stop sign was there.
Yeah. Well, it helped when Joel put the white marks in the road, because I live on that street. I live down further, and I must have ran that light, I don't know how many times, Joey. Not that light, that stop sign.
Write them up.
Yeah. But now they are legal, and they are being enforced, and I think it's slowed a lot of traffic down on Bushy Street alone. And then once it goes all the way to Grand Avenue, I think the Robin Hood thing too. And we can also look at where it goes into Robin Hood. Robin Hood Drive actually goes into where your building is and goes all the way over to the fence to the elementary school. That's, if you go onto Google Maps, that's Robin Hood Drive. So we can also look at yields or stop signs at that area too. That would help.
So our concern is a lot of children coming out of that area.
Absolutely.
Fast traffic, and it's pretty fast now, so when you continue going straight till people get trained, that's a danger zone.
But I'll argue the point that since we put the 3 stop signs there, it's slowed down a lot. Yeah. Anything else with our budgets?
I'd just like to make a
Don't forget you work for us, Harold.
Yeah, I know. That's why some of the stuff I know. In Kathy's budget, and she's very
Speak up, please.
in Kathy's budget, she's very sensitive about how much her budget goes up. So when you look at her budget and you say, okay, last year she only asked for $300,000, and this year she's asking for $400,000. The taxpayers, which myself knows, but a lot of people wouldn't, is her tax rate and the amount she asked for is greatly either goes up or down by the amount of money that is carried over in delinquent taxes. And unfortunately, this year, Kathy didn't have that money. And so if people look at her, the general budget and say, boy, it's up a lot from what it used to be, is because that revenue was not there.
Right.
And on the highway part of it, I understand there's a lot of people are going to say, well, we lost an employee, and so our budget should be down. And to explain a little bit about that, because I did have a good process, help them putting that budget together, the amount of money that we had to pay for wages went down some. The insurance went down some because we don't have a family. But if the taxpayers actually look down through, they'll see that there's 3 items on that budget that are usually not, that have a huge increase. One of them is we're going to blast out on the pond road. We're going to add sidewalks down Robin Hood Drive. And there's 10,000 more put in on through, which I didn't know until my road commissioner told me there's 10,000 on road improvement because we have to redo the industrial park.
Yep.
And so to explain why our budget is not down to reflect the loss of an employee, that's the reason why.
Did you want to comment?
I think Harold covered it pretty well. What we got to realize is if we don't get after some of these roads, the long-term cost of fixing them is going to increase. So the money we saved from the employee went to other improvements. And what we did is we held the budget at the same rate as last year, and we will do that again next year unless something changes. So the idea is we maintain that budget for a while without an increase.
So the rec committee, the library, and Missisquoi Valley Rescue came in level funded for the budgets, which is great. I think the police department came in less than 3%, Joey, because I never did get that. It was less than 3% increase, so that's good. Did you have something, Reg? Oh, okay. So
How did the fire department, is that not the same, did that change much?
the fire department went up, I believe it was 12%, Timmy?
Yeah, the reason for that is we're putting into the budget replacement air packs, so the taxpayers do not see it all at one shot. We're talking 28 air packs, and we're put into the budget to replace between now and 2023, replace 5 air packs a year until that time frame comes up. They're getting old, and they need to be replaced. So we put into that budget. We have put in for grants, but of course, the way grants go, there's nothing guaranteed on that. But at least right now, it's a start for our budget.
And folks that watch our shows, watch our select board meetings and the trustees meetings. And Timmy takes a meeting from the select board every year. Safety is very important. Missisquoi Valley Rescue, everybody comes to our, we critique and try to keep things as low as possible. But Timmy, or his people that's putting these budgets together, the select board and us that are putting the general and the highway together, and the police and the rescue and even the school budget. We don't approve these budgets, the voters approve them. So all we can do is put the information out there, give them as much information as really possible, and they're the final decision, not us. I don't know what more I could say. And Timmy, everything that we went through, no offense, man. So it's up to the voters. With that being said, any more discussion on our budgets? When?
Another compliment and an advocacy point. Very pleased about the sidewalk study up to MVU. You talk about a hotspot for an ambulance. With kids walking to and from that school on that limited side street.
We've been lucky. We've been lucky.
So I'm really pleased, we're really pleased that that's on your radar screen. We'll do whatever we can to support that.
Okay, thank you. Anything more on budgets for the school or town? Okay, public comment. Anybody want to say anything? Nobody? I can't hear you. Any other necessary business? We have A underneath that is the announcing of the rec path, which we already did. We voted on it at our last meeting. The only thing is we didn't sign it into document law. Okay. I wasn't gonna do this, but I have it here, and Brian's good at reading these type of things. Knock yourself out, please.
All right.
We did this at our select board meeting, and it is on TV.
Okay, this is a resolution to honor the fit and healthy recreation path in honor of Richard Dick Thompson. Whereas Richard Dick Thompson served for over 16 years as the Swanton Town Administrator, and whereas Richard Dick Thompson was instrumental in working with Bonnie Wangener of the Northwest Regional Planning Commission and Amy Brewer of the Northwestern Lifestyle Medicine to secure grant funding for the creation of a fitness path on the length of an abandoned rail line, and whereas Richard Dick Thompson secured the right for the town to create a fitness path on the abandoned rail line owned by the state of Vermont, and whereas Richard Dick Thompson organized a volunteer effort to construct the fitness path in addition to the expenditure of $35,000 in grant funds to pay for other services, and whereas Richard Dick Thompson secured multiple donations of goods, funds, and services from business and individuals to help pay for the path construction, thereby reducing the cost to the town and promoting community spirit, and whereas the Swanton Select Board members want to extend their gratitude for the extraordinary effort and vision of Richard Dick Thompson in making the fitness path a reality. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Swanton Select Board recognize and appreciate this extraordinary effort and vision and wants to make that recognition and appreciation a matter of public record for posterity. Further be it resolved that the Town of Swanton Select Board directs that this path shall henceforth be named the Richard Dick Thompson Fit and Healthy Recreation Path in honor of his extraordinary effort and vision in making this path a reality. Adopted by the Town of Swanton, Vermont Select Board on the 16th day of February 2016.
So with that being said, David, you have the document?
Yeah, you're good. It's one of the meetings. You gotta be kidding me. I could get my government to sign it with that.
Can I say?
Absolutely.
I just want to.
You're a little out of order, but I'll allow it.
I'm looking at this, and I looked at the village booklet, and I love the fact that we have our community being reflected on the cover of both the town and the village booklet. So whoever championed that, thank you.
And if you look at the very first page too, there's a dedication in there to a gentleman that we lost last year that owned the campground down in West Swanton, is Ron Case, is also in there too, which I thought was nice. Everybody sign that?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll get it,
Yep. Next on the agenda is executive session. Do we need to go into executive session for anything?
Nope.
That being said, next is adjournment. Some motion, please.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second it.
Motion's been made by John, seconded by James. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned at 8:16. Oh, whoa. Sorry. Kirk Thompson's all done. Tonight's his last night. He's served 2 years on our board. Want to thank Kirk for what you've given to the board for the past couple of years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.